The first hour or so was me talking to IT with a few of the other people who were also joining at that time, trying to set it all up. I also had loads of problems. So it took everyone else like 40 minutes. It took me, I think, 4.5 hours of like sitting there with an engineer, which was, real good fun. But he was super helpful and friendly, and we just ended up chatting. And I learned quite a lot from him about how to get stuff done, because he was a good person to have. So I've not had laptop problems since.
Amazing. No, that's good. Like what you said about the 40 minutes thing. I think something like on the PDF, it said for me an hour or so, and it took me the whole day. And it wasn't until like 4 p.m. that I finally got talking to my team. And I just felt so embarrassed, but what can you do, right? Yeah, cool. Yeah. Elle, anything to add?
For me, it was really nice because we sort of had this expectation where it didn't matter if we didn't get online that day. We were all like, it was a grad scheme sort of thing, so we were all expected to get started as soon as we could. But there were definitely so many people in my cohort that sort of started, and then it was just impossible to get their laptops to work. And it was, the whole day of on the phone to support, like, please, can you just help me get my laptop set up? And mine got delivered like a week before I started, so I was able to, I had it all unboxed ready on my desk so that when I woke up, I could start the process. And I had a PDF that was out of date and really, really difficult to follow, but managed to only have to ring support once to get my laptop started. So I was pretty happy with that and got on Teams by really close to the end of the day. But it was nice that we didn't have that expectation to get an online, it was like day 0 was actually our day 1, and then we started when everybody was online the next morning.
That is actually really good. Like, I wish that was explicitly communicated in my case. Even though I was like calling my manager and I was like, I'm so sorry, I'm not online yet. He was like, calm down. Don't worry, it's your first day. But I wish that is like explicitly communicated on a PDF or comes on an email, just because it would definitely ease like a lot of people, because they don't feel like that pressure to meet their team straight away or whatever. So yeah, no, that's really good. Awesome. And Rebekah, how was your experience?
So I think mine was quite different to you guys, and that might be because I work for a startup. So we're growing quite a lot now. So I think we're probably, when this is out, about 30 people or so. But at the time it was a bit less. And I also had a gap between my 2 jobs, and I made my new employer aware of that. So I was kind of happy to log on and check that things were working beforehand. But yeah, my CTO sent me my laptop by courier, and he'd set everything up. And then I just had to put in kind of my username and stuff, log on, change my password. And then the rest of it I could do in my first week. So I could still, in my first day, join all the meetings and get to know everyone. And then all of the setup, like all of the software and programs that we all use, I just did that step by step in my first week. But the actual getting onto my laptop and stuff, that was super easy, because it had all been set up for me and just couriered to me, ready to go, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's sort of the same thing with me. But I think I don't know, I think it's sort of crazy because over the past year, that's what companies have had to adapt to. And I know that that's not a normal process for them. And I know that the company that I'm working for now, they had a few, when the lockdown first hit, when COVID first hit in March 2020, they actually told me how difficult it was to get laptops out, just because they didn't have that process set up. And so the people who started in March 2020, they actually didn't end up working officially. They had access to Slack, but they didn't, start working until 2 months down the line, just because they didn't have a laptop, and that process wasn't there. And so it is nice now, as this becomes a new normal, and as lockdown has extended a little bit more, it's a process that people are sharpening up on, and it's just fantastic to hear that you've all had quite positive experiences and nothing terrible happened. But I just wanted to share a quick story. So after I got my laptop on my first week, I think it was 2 weeks later, I finally got everything set up, and it was absolute nightmare because of my laptop and my Wi-Fi issues. But then 2 weeks later, I spilt water all over my laptop and it was open and stuff, and I was like, no, it can't be broken, because I've had MacBooks before, and they were always resilient. I threw all sorts of shit across, like I threw my physical MacBook, but then like I think the 2015 onward versions are quite delicate, and I have the new 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro, and as soon as I spilt the water on it, it just completely died. I tried rice, I tried like all sorts of different things, and then I ended up having to call my manager the next day, like, can you send me another laptop? I had to go through the whole process again, but the second time I was a lot quicker, and so that counts for something, right? But it is one of those things. It's still like the whole process actually taught me how, again, it just reiterated the fact that there is that process now that companies have had to like adapt to and make sure it's seamless, so that new joiners feel as integrated as they can to the company from the get-go. So yeah, thank you all for contributing to that. And so my next question is around, what were the things that helped you onboard remotely? Like, what did you do and what did the company do? This is quite a generalized question, so feel free to take in any direction at all. I'll start with Rebekah, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So I'll answer it in two parts. Probably the easiest is to answer what my company did that really helped with the process. One of the things that I've written about on my site and kind of talked about quite openly is they have a really excellent one-to-one culture. And my first week was loads of one-to-ones, so much so that I almost forgot I wasn't in an office with people. Like, I was just getting to know different people, and it was really, really casual. You know, I was drinking loads of coffee at home because it kind of felt like that vibe, like I was just going out for a coffee with people. I met everyone on my team within the first like couple days, but there was also some other people that I guess they knew that I'd work with frequently outside of my team that they kind of integrated into that first week. And then there were some others that by the end of the first kind of 2 months, I'd had coffees with everyone. And that was really welcoming and made me feel really great. I'd come from a really big company before where, you know, it was different because I knew the people in my team anyway, because I'd worked with them for 3 years, but I had talked with them a lot less while working from home. So it was quite a culture shock for me to be in a team that was like so open to chatting. And I kind of thought, oh, this is just the first week and like it's going to die off. But actually it's been consistent. If you don't have one-to-ones in the diary, your manager or someone else will go, you know, have you scheduled your one-to-ones this week? Make sure you're checking in with someone. So yeah, that's been a really helpful thing and has made it feel less lonely. I also think the one-to-one culture is quite good in that, whether it's project related or just like a coffee and catching up with someone. In my company, if you say I want 5 minutes, it's really 5 minutes. If you say I want half an hour, it's half an hour. And that means that I think people are less nervous to jump on a call. Because in my old workplace, you know, I think there wasn't that culture of jumping on a call because we were so used to being in the office all the time that you would associate a call with a meeting, and that is always going to be longer. And so I think people just didn't jump on calls as easily. And that's been something that I think has helped my remote process the whole way through, because whether it's just, I don't know what's wrong with my code, like I've been staring at this for ages, let's just jump on a call, let me have a look at it. You know, that actually happened to me this morning. I was like, I don't know where these 4 individuals have gone, jumped on a call, within 2 minutes, my colleague was like, oh, that's where they've gone. And it was all resolved in seconds. And I'd been staring at this thing for like half an hour. So that's been one thing that they've done and carried through the whole work from home process that I think has been super beneficial for me to feel comfortable. One thing that I've done is to remind myself how new I am all the time. So when I kind of reflect on the work that I've done that week, whether it was at the beginning or now, you know, reminding myself where I am on that journey, because some days I can be really hard on myself, or I think, oh, I should know how this person communicates, or I should know how to do this project. I've been working on it for 2 months. And then I go, well, actually, I've only been in tech for less than 6 months. Like, I need to remind myself of that all the time. And that goes from everything, as I said, from the coding skills to the people skills and learning how my company works. And then also on the flip side, remembering, you know, I talk about this often. I think I shared a tweet today about it, that we're not working from home out of choice. You know, some of us do that, and I used to do that in my old job occasionally, but we're doing all of this with no known endpoint as of yet, and that can make it really challenging communication wise, following each other's work. You know, shadow days are really difficult at home, all of that stuff. And just reminding myself of that whenever I get those down or low moments has been really helpful to then match up with the one-to-ones and the conversations with my colleagues and working through all of that stuff. So if I had to boil it down really, really short for you guys, so I wasn't talking at you for the whole episode, that those would be my kind of 2 things personally and that my company's done.
That's really, really positive, actually, just because like it can be quite isolating, can't it, when you start a new job remotely and you're just talking to people on the screen, and, you know, the effort from the other side, from the people who work at the company to try and bring you in, try and get you up to speed with the culture and up to speed with the code base or whatever it is, it's so vital. And so having those conversations early on is so important, and I'm glad that you had such a positive experience, it sounds like. So no, that's great. Elle, is there anything you would add to that in your experience?
Yeah, so I completely agree with what Rebecca said, especially with regards to like feeling down and feeling like, you know, oh, I should be better at this, or, you know, that sort of pressure that you put on yourself that you can't compare to everybody else in the team. And it's really important to remind yourself that, you know, this is my first job in tech, so there shouldn't be that expectation of me to perform like the engineers that are higher up than me in the team. But they are there to support me. And I found something that's been so vital in my joining my team was that I buddied up with somebody. So somebody who came through the graduate scheme at previous years, but is in my team. He's now my sort of buddy in the team. So any work that he does, he now sort of pulls me in and gets me to help him with that. Or even if it's just if I sit on a call with him and pair program, anything like that, we just work together on things. And it really helped me feel like I'm not just an inconvenience and I'm not just a fly on the wall in meetings. I'm actually getting involved with coding and actually getting to work on projects when I'm so early on in my career.
Oh, that's just well said. I love it. I love everything you said there. I think, like you said, pair programming is so important, and having that buddy system is really important as well, because when you're new and you join a Slack channel with full of names of people you don't even know, like how do you even start to like I know personally, I didn't find the confidence to like start a chat with some random person I've never met, even though it's sort of expected. Well, not expected. I think from my personal experience, I've always wanted to be a bit more proactive, but at the same time, it's still quite daunting. So having someone on the other side being like, hey, I can pair program with you, let me buddy up with you, it's so vital and it's so important. And I'm glad that you had that experience. Sonnie, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
So my first week was a little bit different because, well, first it took me ages to get going, but once I was going, it was my first day was just like meet all the people. So like it just like one after another, one-on-ones, you know, talk to my manager goes, oh, go talk to this person. And I kind of had to set it all up myself, which was quite good. So they had a list of people who I had to talk to, and they all kind of had space for it, but it was kind of left to me to be proactive and say, you know, these are the people, you know, set up the meetings, get in contact with them and start that conversation. And I found that was quite good because it was like, it wasn't just me sitting there going, right, this person next to is this, don't know. It was kind of, I had to, you know, look them up, see what they did, find out how they were going to help me in my journey moving forward. And as a result of doing that, I then had a lot of people who I knew, like, oh, I'm having a problem in this specific area, right, that's the person to go to. Or, you know, I've already talked to them before, so it's way less scary just to send like oh, I'm stuck, can you help me type message. which I found in my first week I was doing like basically every 20 minutes, just over and over again. The other thing was I also had a mentor, and she was pretty key in it, because again, she was the kind of person I went to. I'm like, I've been asked to do this, but I don't even know what that means. So it gave me someone I could ask like the really dumb questions to. And then, I mean, I still use that now. So I'm like 6 months in, and I'm still the same person I go to. I'm like, I should definitely know what this means, but I've got no idea. Can you like make me look smart and help me reply to this person? And then having that like really strong connection has given me the confidence to just go like, oh yeah, I can definitely make that change or do that, and then go ask how to do it later, which is, yeah, it's helped me grow a lot in that half a year.
Yeah,
I fully identify with what you said about asking the stupid questions, because on my first week, I remember I was searching for one of our internal software that we use. I was searching for it on Google, like what is this? And I was like trying to figure, like, and I was like, why isn't it working? And I was searching like, why is there no Stack Overflow for this? And it's because it's obviously internal to us, but I didn't like know where to look for that. And so I think that's an important one. Like mine was less formal than having a buddy or a mentor, probably because our team is smaller, but having someone that I knew I could go to that wasn't my manager, I think is important. And that seems like it's a common thread with you guys. It's like, not that your manager's not great or informal or chatty, but there is something a bit different with that relationship. And so I think it is good to go to like teammates or colleagues, you know, you can kind of bounce off some of the silly things too and not feel very embarrassed.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like when it's your manager, you're a bit more like, you know, I don't want them to think I'm like, I wasn't the correct person to hire or something, where kind of like a team member, they're like, oh yeah, I was the same, you know, just do this, and this, and you'll be fine, which, yeah, it really helps settle those nerves.
Yeah. Oh, I can't agree enough. Like, just echoing everything you've said. It's just sometimes, like, when I think back on my first few weeks, I kept going to the same person, and it got to the point where I was like, I hope I'm not annoying them. And then one time we were like talking, and I said, I hope I'm not annoying you, because sometimes I just talk and talk and talk without thinking of what I'm gonna say, and it's like not, I sometimes don't filter what I say. And then he was like, no, it's completely fine, because I went through the same thing as you. I didn't come from a like computer science degree background, and so I totally understand where you're coming from, especially when you're still quite like early in your career, so don't worry too much about it. And I think it's really nice to have those like connections with your teammates, because it helps you feel like you've all already said, like less alone and less and more integrated in the team. And I think that is super important, especially in those first few weeks. No, that all sounds fantastic. Thank you all for sharing that. And I think from all your introductions earlier, you're all engineers, which is great. So I'm going to throw this question at you. So how scary is it to be introduced to a whole new code base? Especially remotely? Isn't that, it's so hard, so difficult. And I know personally, I'm still, like I said, I'm 2 months into my new role, and I'm still trying to understand all the different moving pieces. And I don't know, like I've been telling myself, as like Rebecca said, that I need to keep like reminding myself that actually I am new, I need to take it slow, there's no pressure on me. But I still find myself as a type A personality telling myself, you must know it now, and it can be quite daunting. So what are some of the things you've all done to make sure that, you know, you were brought up to speed with the code base and all the different technologies, especially if you've not used the technology before? I'll go to you, Elle.
For me, it was really difficult to start with, because everything was completely new. We started with a programming language that I didn't know, and it was very, very scary to begin with. But as I said, I had that buddy who was there to help me along, and lots of shadowing and pair programming helped me to understand the small part that we were working on. But the most difficult bit to understand was how that fits in, how our microservice fits into all of the other microservices that fit together to do what we need them to do. And trailing through any documentation I could find didn't really help. And the one thing that I found that was really, really useful was I went to every single engineer on my team and just sort of booked a slot in their calendar and was like, hey, can we just have a chat about things you've worked on previously, things you're working on now, and your picture in your head of what our system looks like, and anything you foresee that could potentially become an issue in our project coming up. And I got like so many different perspectives from all the different engineers, and that really helped me sort of form an idea of, you know, an amalgamation of everybody else's images of what the process and what the systems actually do. Sort of helped me think about, okay, I sort of understand where everything kind of goes and everything sort of fits, and how what we're coding right now fits into everything like that. It's definitely probably the most confusing thing I'd had to try and do over the past few months, and I'm still definitely not anywhere near close to understanding everything. But sort of speaking to my other engineers and my team members, also like scrum masters and project managers and business designers, all those kind of people, they know a lot more about the project than me as a newbie, so they were really helpful in sort of getting that insight.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good. Yeah, I think it all, the more I listen to all of you talk about this, I think it's all sort of coming to me. It's sort of like, I don't know, making more sense to me that how important other people, like, you know, helping you is. Having that mentor, having someone to pair program with, they definitely add value to your journey in this new role. And yeah, Rebecca, have you got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so when you sent through the preliminary questions, this is the question that made me laugh, because for context, my startup's engineering team was less than 6 months old when I joined.
Wow.
And we're hiring 5 people in April, and we currently have a team of 4. So it's like a really, really new team. So code base is maybe a stretch for what I was given when I joined. No, there was a lot of stuff that the back-end developers obviously created a lot of our internal software, and interactions with the cloud have got loads of stuff there. There was we work a lot on Jupyter notebooks, and there was a lot of notebooks that have already been created for, you know, like standard processes and stuff. So it wasn't that I kind of started with nothing, but a lot of the stuff that we're developing for our products is still in movement, I guess. And I'm very much at the heart of that now. You know, when I straight away started, maybe I wasn't, but as soon as I've kind of got to grips with what things are and everything, I'm kind of within that already, which was again really, really daunting. I'm a self-taught coder. I did a web dev course in 2016, and then, you know, started playing around with Python in my own time, you know, really properly in end of 2019, 2020. So very, very new to the languages that I, you know, have been using. SQL, I just kind of dipped in because I knew that that's what data engineers should know, really. So I hadn't actually worked in any of these languages. And I think whilst the courses that I've been doing on the side and had done previous to the job were great, nothing prepares you for actually putting it into action, I guess. And as you guys know, you never code 100% in one language either. So we deal with knowledge graphs and graph databases, and we use Sparkle for that. And I don't know if any of you have ever touched Sparkle, but it's not SQL, is all I'm saying. It's not easy. So there was a whole other language that I'd never even heard of that I had to then kind of learn about and upskill on. And I think I'm doing that every day still. I wouldn't say that I'm done there. But I would echo what Elle said in terms of reaching out to people. There were points where I knew I could do something in Python. I knew what I was doing would produce the result, but it just looked like a lot of lines. And I kind of sat there and I said to my colleagues, do you mind just going over and seeing if I could make this more efficient? Or I'm doing X task, have you ever done this before? And now that we're onboarding new people in April, as a team, we've got together and gone, here's some useful examples of stuff that they can then use. Or, you know, one of my colleagues has prepared a code base for them to help them with their first project. And I'm pulling together all of the stuff from our Bitbucket repo that's maybe internal things, plus external kind of packages and libraries that we've signed off and are secure for our company. All of that sort of stuff, I'm documenting it in one place because that's something that I personally found very difficult to navigate. especially as someone who'd only coded for fun. Like, if I like a developer, I'll probably try out their stuff. Whereas you can't do that in a company, right? It has to be signed off. They have to think that it's secure, that they trust the source that it's coming from. So being involved in those conversations and pulling all of that stuff together was really useful. And I think half of it was kind of reading the code base and the stuff that was there, and half of it was just, please, can you look at my stuff and give me honest feedback? Or, you know, I'm really stuck on this particular problem, can we code it together? And yeah, going back to that pair programming thing, I think is super important. And I hope that I never stop doing it, you know, even if I'm leading a team. Like, some, you know, I've taught some of my colleagues things and they've taught me things, and, you know, I'm sure in the future we've got, like, I wasn't taught coding at school, but children are now. So if I'm leading a team in 10-15 years time, I'm going to be leading a team of people who are probably better at coding than me. So I hope that continues throughout my career. I hope that's not just an onboarding thing, personally.
Yeah, totally. And what you just said about like kids learning how to code now, like my brother has been learning to code since like he was in like infant school, primary school, and I started to code when I was like around 8 years old in my free time, but it was never complete. It was like trial and error on like Pixo, creating like High School Musical fan sites. So I don't know, but now they have a full-on curriculum. I'm sort of like worried about the next gen. Well, not worried, I'm excited for them, but also like just the fact they're all going to be so much smarter. They'll be like, sometimes my brother questions some of my like development decisions. He's like, why have you done it like that? I'm like, I don't know, I'm so sorry, you know. I learned how to do it like this. But yeah, no, those are really, really great points. Sonnie, anything to add to that?
I'd say I'm actually very different from everyone else. So I, when I joined my role, I had a lot of experience doing iOS development. So I did an internship. I wrote my dissertation on that and stuff. So for me, the challenge wasn't like knowing the language or how to do it, but the difference was the scale at which it was being done. So kind of for reference, we have 30 other iOS engineers that work over various teams. So like all the projects I've made, you know, they're pretty small, or in my internship, it was like a smaller version of their app. So everything was like, you know, you could look over it in like an hour and be like, yeah, this all makes sense. But I think even 6 months in, I'm nowhere close to understanding all of our app and how it's built. So that was the big difference for me, which it was like, right, so I need to change here. Like, where do I even find this in my code editor? Because, you know, we have hundreds of thousands of files. So it's like, where is it? I don't know. Who do I ask? What's it called? That kind of thing. And for me, it was kind of learning how to ask questions in a useful way. So I kind of had a hierarchy of 3 different levels. And one was like, you know, I literally can't do anything. I'm going to annoy someone right now. The next level down was like, I'll give it 20 minutes, you know, I'll try and understand it. But if not, you know, it's not worth wasting hours trying to figure out where something is. Then I'll ask someone. And then I kind of had like I'm doing fine, but why are things this way kind of level, which then when I did one-on-ones with the different people who are responsible for that area, I could then ask. So I kind of had something to talk about. So for me, it was like learning why everything's done so differently. Because I guess the bigger you get, the more kind of processes and kind of architectural decisions are made. So yeah, that was a real adjustment.
Yeah, no, what you said about scale, just like I resonate with that so much, just because I went from coding my own small little projects first in my room, like, you know, doing all that, and then when I got my first tech job, they threw me into that massive code base. I was like, oh my god, let's scrap the whole thing and start again. Because that is complex. But yeah, no, I totally get that. I think you've all touched on some really great points here. For me personally, I was given a few tickets in the backlog that were quite that covered quite a lot of the different technologies that I would be using day to day, and I had some really great tickets that they prepped for me, and they were like, go and do this. It touches on networking, which I absolutely hate, but there you go, have to learn it. Networking, like how things are deployed, how our virtual machines are orchestrated, and and how our like virtual machines are provisioned and stuff like that, what technologies we'll be using. So that was around like Kubernetes, some Chef, networking and DNS. I absolutely hate, but like it was all of these like tickets that were exposed to me that I finally got to grips on, like the bits of like technologies that I need to sort of do a deep dive on in the future. And now that I've been exposed to them, hopefully the more I become exposed to them, the easier they'd get. And another thing that helped me a lot when I was being onboarded was the engineers that I worked with told me to look for clues. Before, obviously they were more than happy to like help me out when I was really stuck, but I think they really appreciate that I'm quite an independent person, so I do like figuring things out myself before asking people, sometimes way too much. Sometimes I can spend hours when I could just spend 2 minutes talking to someone. But they told me, make sure you look on Confluence, and Confluence is our documentation like website thing where we keep a nice organized space for all of our documentation of our technologies, and also on Jira. So our Jira is where we have all of the tickets and stuff, and where all our work is organized. And sometimes some of the stuff that you're looking for, other engineers have done it in the past. So if you can track back old work, you can then look at the code or the solution that they did, and maybe it's a similar thing, or maybe it's the same thing, and stuff like that. So that was really helpful for me. And sometimes I just spent hours on like Bitbucket reading all the different types of code and seeing how it all fits together. And I think that's helped me now find out where to go. And you know, slowly every single day I'm getting a lot better with like being up to speed with the code base and technologies. So yeah, that's that question. So the next one I'd love to ask you is, if you could all go back and do it all over again, what is one thing you would do differently? And I'll go to you, Sonnie, first.
Yeah, sure. So kind of once I'd done all that initial onboarding stuff, I had a list of things that, you know, I could look at if I wanted to. So I kind of had a 2-week period of just like, you know, you spend this time to figure it out. You're not expected to really do anything for your team. It's more of a time for you to get comfortable and understand. And what I kind of, the mistake I did a bit was I picked all the stuff that I knew how to do and was like super confident with. It's like, oh, this will make me look really good. So I did all that stuff, you know, you do it quickly and everyone's going, oh, everything's going great. But then I hit the point where I was like, I don't know how to do that one. I don't know how to do that one. Don't know how to do that one. And I got a bit, not panicky, but a bit worried. I'm like, are they going to think I'm a bit of a fraud? Or, you know, it looked like I was doing really well. So I think I would maybe pick the stuff, like a good mixture of stuff I find quite comfortable and easy, and the stuff that was much harder, so that I didn't kind of leave myself all the hard stuff to do at once and, you know, feel a bit like, what do I do here? You know, I've got another week left before I do any teamwork, but I've got like 5 things I don't know how to do. Yeah, and that freaked me out a bit. And then the other thing would be kind of after work, I was exhausted because it was just like Zoom 24/7. And even then I'd like, you know, research stuff to see, so the next day I don't look stupid or like, oh, what does this mean? You know, and I wish I'd just kind of like left it, because in the end, after those 2 weeks, I was just exhausted and like, it just wasn't sustainable at all. And I think if I'd kind of been a bit more deliberate with my time and stuff, I would have been a lot less exhausted for the next 2 weeks after that, as I was just really burnt out from like constantly thinking about stuff.
That's a really good point. I think that would be my point as well. Like, it's not worth it. My first 4 weeks, I was like constantly trying to keep up with, catch up with things, and it's absolutely impossible. How did I think that I could cram in, like, I don't know how long the company's been going on for, like 20 years worth of stuff into like 1 month, so I look good. So yeah, I definitely resonate with that. And that would be something, if I could go back to January, I would tell myself just to chill out a bit and, you know, take it slow. I actually got that as feedback from my teammates in my 5th or 6th week. They were just like, Pawlean, you're doing really well, but slow down, because we can tell you're like stressing yourself out by picking up like 4 tickets at once. And I was like, yeah, okay, I do need to chill out. And now I'm taking it nice and slow. So yeah, no, thank you for that. Rebekah, have you got what's your what would you do differently?
I think we're probably all going to be quite similar here. So I was super eager to start my project work, and so it wasn't like I had a set time, but it was like, do these things and then you can move to the project work. But I think in doing that, I read through loads of documentation, like we've got a Confluence and stuff. So read through all of that documentation, like kind of open things, set things up. And then I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. Which was really good on the one hand, because I completed my first project quite quickly and learned a lot in that process. And, you know, luckily didn't have too many data issues to deal with and stuff. But then my next project was a lot more difficult, because obviously they start you on the easy stuff most of the time. And then when that project came, I had to go back to some of that beginning learning and retry things. I've mentioned Sparkle already. That was definitely a weak point, and I probably should have practiced that a little bit more. And with our new onboarding process, we've kind of anticipated that everyone's going to come with different knowledge, different skills, you know, regardless of whether you've done a boot camp, a degree, self-taught, everyone's got their own kind of strengths in code, but also in other aspects of the business. And so we've built that more into the process, so people have an understanding that they have more of that time. But I was just like assigning myself task after task, trying to get them done. And then, you know, even I think it was February, so that I'd been working there for a few months, I had 1 week where I was so overwhelmed with the amount of tasks I had to do that it wasn't that anyone else was putting pressure, but I was talking to a colleague and I just started crying. And I was like, I've got so many tasks. And he was really kind, and he said, okay, do you want to work today? And I said, yes, I just want to get this one task done. I've been working on it. I just want to do it. He said, okay, you focus on that one task. Let's unassign all of the others and come back tomorrow. And then we can go through what's for you and what's for other people. And that was really helpful to have people that I felt I could, I guess, be honest with when that happened. But if I had done things differently, I think I would have kind of what you guys have both said is taken my time with some of those onboarding tasks a little bit more, and not tried to kind of bear everything and go, look how amazing I am, you know, trying to prove yourself, because they're going to see that in your work anyway, and they see that even if you do one task. So you don't need to take on 20. And I think also from, you know, my previous workplace is the same, regardless whether you work in tech or not. If you keep piling stuff onto your plate and you keep doing them, that's another thing that a lot of us do in tech in particular, I've noticed, but across the board, as I said, if you keep taking on tasks and completing them, your team doesn't know that you're burnt out. Your team doesn't know that you're not coping at home. They just think you're really bloody efficient. And so they just go, oh, okay, here's a new one, here's a new one, here's a new one. And you keep doing them because you think you have to do them. And then eventually you do get burnt out, as I have done in my previous job. And you sit and you go, I should have spoken up sooner. I should have said this is too much before. And it's not to kind of put the blame on any of us as individuals, but I do think speaking up and kind of learning what your capacity is and giving more room at the beginning, because like now I know 6 months later I am able to take on more tasks than I was in November. But in November, I feel like maybe I was taking on more tasks than I do now somehow. It's just like a weird one. But yeah, you can't expect your team also to call you out. You have to kind of voice that yourself. And I think I wasn't doing that at the beginning. And yeah, getting a bit better at doing that now, I think.
Yeah, totally a learning curve. Totally relate to everything you said there. And how about you, Elle?
For me, it was definitely more of like a day-to-day thing. So I completely agree with sort of taking things way too fast and assigning myself work and putting that pressure to perform every day as much as I could. And for me, that was even to the point where I really wish, looking back to September, that I just stepped away from the computer more often. You know, there were days when I first started where I'd literally not move from my desk the whole day, 9 to 5. Aside from lunch, you know, gotta have my food, but not taking any comfort breaks, not standing up, going for a walk, going to get a drink, really took its toll physically, because I was putting all that pressure on myself to, as you've both said, to perform and to try and prove to everybody that I am a good developer and look, like, you hired me, I'm really good, this is why you hired me. But it's not it's not productive, it's not efficient to force yourself, you know, never take your eyes away from the screen. And I definitely caught myself doing that so often. And I'm really trying now to get into the habit of taking those breaks and making sure that I split my day up with, you know, going outside, and everything like that, having a walk and stretching just from not sitting in my chair all day. But I wish that I'd started that in September, because it is something that you've got to build up. It's a habit that you've got to get yourself into. And I wish I'd started that back then, because now I've got to work on it with the repercussions of like eye strain and getting headaches from staring at a screen all day. It's really, really not good for you.
Oh, I love that well-being aspect there. Thank you so much for bringing that up. But yeah, I totally get that. Like my first month, I had a horrible migraine, just almost every single week, just because I do exactly what you describe. I just sit here and try and learn as much as possible and just stare at the screen. I felt like I didn't even blink at some points, but you know, that's how extreme it was. But yeah, no, that's some really great like learnings there. And my final question, wow, time has flown by so quickly. I could talk to you all like forever, to be honest. But my last question for you all is, if you know someone is listening to this right now and they've just started their new job remotely, what is one key actionable advice that you would tell them to, you know, hit the ground running, but also like have that more sustainable approach towards onboarding remotely? I'll start with Rebekah.
Sure. So we've talked a lot about kind of on the job stuff and coding and all of that learning. But I would say my one piece of advice is much more personable, because remember, you know, people say this all the time, but we're at work more than we're at home. We talk to our colleagues more than most other people. And so even though you're remote, even though you're chatting on video chat, on calls, or, you know, on your Slack channel, G chat, whatever, be the truest version of yourself that you can be. I do not want my colleagues to have a heart attack when they realize how extroverted and loud I am when we move back to the office together. So I'm vocal on calls. I message them a lot. I speak out about things. I engage with topics, because if we were in the office and I heard someone chatting in the kitchen about, you know, Love Island or like Love is Blind or whatever other reality crap TV that I watch, I would be in the kitchen talking to them. So if I see it in the G chat, I'm instantly replying, you know. So being the truest version of yourself so that your colleagues can get to know you is kind of good for them, so you can build your friendships and they can learn a bit about you, but also for yourself, so that you don't feel self-conscious again when we then move into the office and we're starting this whole process again, because it is nerve-wracking. Like I've met one of my colleagues for a walk when we had a bit of a window in between lockdowns and we just happened to live close by, but the rest of them I've not met them in person, so they've got no idea what Rebekah is like in person, and I don't want that to be a shock. So I've tried to be as open as possible about who I am as much as I can online and in our meetings and in our calls, and not kind of hold back parts of my personality that I know I would share at work, if that makes sense. So that would be my biggest advice, is don't hold back on yourself, because they hired you for you, whatever you put forward in that interview process, and they're going to have to work with you in the office soon. This is not going to be forever for all of us. So try and put that across as much as you can, whether it's informal, formal, however you choose to present at work, but try and be the truest version of yourself. That would be my advice.
Oh my God, I absolutely love that. That is a tweet. That is like a blog post, that whole thing you just said. Fantastic. Thank you. Elle, how about you?
I completely agree with what Rebekah said. And also my point would definitely be on a similar note. One thing that I would definitely give advice to anybody else, and something that I wish I did more, is meeting your colleagues and get to know them. I was so shy when I first started because I'd never met anyone. It was all online, and it was really, I found it quite difficult to make that time to be sociable when it's all on Teams or on Slack, and it's quite difficult. You have to physically reach out to somebody to then get that time to meet them, but that is so important. And it's just like getting your name in someone else's calendar is a really good thing, because you get to meet them, you get to know what they're like, you get a little bit of insight into their life, just a nice chat. And then something I found that's really nice, that one of my team members suggested was just, if you've got some free time and you want to chat, just call me. Having a little window open in your calendar of like, I'm going to be free and this is not work time, or I'm going to work on something, but I don't mind if you want to come and have a chat. It's just nice to have that time dedicated to meeting those people, because as you said, I've not met any of my co-workers at all ever. So it's difficult to form those relationships and that working bond that a team has when everything's online. And so for me, definitely number one tip would be to get to know your colleagues and get to know everybody, or as many people as you can in where you're working, just to make new friends, but also to feel more comfortable, feel more closely aligned to the company. And it sounds a bit like cliche, but networking can be really, really useful when you're inside your company as well, just to get to know more people and learn so many more things from so many different areas.
That's inspired me. Like tomorrow I'm gonna put in a coffee date with with someone, like one of my colleagues, just have loads of coffee breaks tomorrow. Thank you for that. And Sonnie, how about you?
So for me, the biggest thing that helped was setting expectations, whether it's with my manager, with team members and stuff. So like when you're in an office, it's really easy to see, it's 5 o'clock, people are leaving, I can leave, or like something like that. But where you're online, like the first day I saw like on Slack, people's green bubbles were still there. I'm like, can I go? Is this, am I leaving way too early? So like I talked to my manager and I was like, like, can I just finish at this time? I was like, yeah, that's fine. And then after that, I'm like, it's hit that time, I'm fine to leave, and stuff like that. And then, it was like, are my hours flexible? So I'm way more of a morning person. So some mornings, like I'd rather just get up at like and get my work day done. It's like, is that fine? Is it not? And found out that it was. So stuff like that has made my working life much more comfortable. And I don't really like worry like, is that going to be all right? So like, even similar for like the self-care stuff, like I'm perfectly fine to go take a half-hour walk in the middle of the day. I asked them like, is that fine? It's fine. And now I can do things like that, which make my working days much more enjoyable. And so that I'm not just sat at a desk, because I guess in offices, you go talk to people, you go get coffee and stuff, but it's way too easy just to sit at your laptop all day, not talk to anyone and be like, what have I done today? I've just typed, really. And it's just not as fulfilling for me. It's more fun when you've talked to people, you've chatted, maybe it wasn't that productive, but those personal relationships are just as important, because you never know when you'll get volunteered for something and then, oh, he can do that, I heard about that, and then suddenly you get a new opportunity from it.
Oh my god, that is so true.
Yeah, I back both of you with that, because one thing that we started chatting about in our team is a lot of us have interests that they're not our job role, but they're kind of like sideways. So obviously a lot of you, if you follow me online and stuff, will know that I'm a massive cloud enthusiast, and I like really am kind of getting into my learning in the cloud space, which is vast. But when I started my job, I've applied to one thing, and it's not that it doesn't interact with the cloud, but what I want to do is more than that. And so now my colleagues know. So then in the future, when projects come up, they're like, oh, we have someone who's interested. So I completely agree with what both of you guys have said. And the expectations thing is really important, because my old workplace and my current workplace working style and formalities is completely different. So you can't like assume that it's the same. So yeah, I like both of those advice. They're really, really good.
Yeah, definitely setting those, making sure that you understand the expectations is super important, because if you don't ask and you don't know, you can sometimes drive yourself crazy. You could just be sat there like, oh, I need to be glued to my desk. I need to be online. And, when I first started, I also had the same worries, and I ended up bringing it up with my manager, because sometimes my laptop would auto lock if I just really wanted to go downstairs to pick up a parcel or something. And then I'd panic. I'd be like running up the stairs, like, I need to get back, because they'll see that my Slack green status has gone off. And yeah, but no one actually cares. And, it is pretty flexible. But yeah, that is definitely super important both ways. But yeah, we've actually come to the end of this episode, and I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who has joined. Sonnie, Elle, Rebekah, you've given all of us, me and the listeners today, some great advice on remote onboarding, and I hope that I wish them all the best of luck in their own journeys. And yeah, thank you once again for joining. I'll post your social media and blog posts and all sorts of like other cool things you're all doing, because I know you all get involved with all sorts of things in the show notes and on my blog as well, because I'll write a blog post about this podcast. So yeah, I'll share that all in there. But yeah, thank you again to everyone who's joined, and we'll speak to you again soon.
She ain't never met a young and do it like me. She got a man, but she said she really